The air within the grand chamber of the Xylanthian High Council was not merely stale. It was heavy with the weight of 5,000 years of unbroken tradition, smelling faintly of ozone and crushed velvet. Light filtered through the translucent, amber-hued dome far above, casting long, solemn beams upon the obsidian floor where the delegates stood in their designated circles of influence. This was the heart of the ascendancy, a political engine that had ground civilizations into dust and elevated others to servitude for eons. Yet on this rotation, the silence that hung between the towering pillars of carved basalt was not one of reverence, but of a paralyzing, suffocating fear. The holographic projection in the center of the room, a swirling sphere of distorted data and static, pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to contradict the heartbeat of every living thing in the chamber. It was an anomaly, a ghost from a sector of space that the star maps had long ago labeled as a graveyard, a place where the physics of the universe grew thin and brittle. High Counselor Vrax, his carapace gleaming with the ceremonial oils of his station, clicked his mandibles together in a slow, rhythmic expression of agitation. He looked at the projection, then at the gathered assembly of admirals, diplomats, and scholars, his compound eyes refracting the anxiety in the room into 1,000 fractured images. The object on the screen was impossible. It was a silhouette against the background radiation of the abyssal rift, a jagged tear in the fabric of the galaxy where no ship had ventured and returned for 10 generations. But the silhouette was distinct, angular, and undeniably artificial. It was not of Xylanthian design, nor did it belong to the elegant, fluid architecture of the aquatic Sildari or the brutalist block ships of the Krull. It was primitive, blocky, and scarring to the aesthetic senses of the High Council. It was Terran. "The readings must be in error," Vrax stated, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the sensory tendrils of the nearby scribes. He gestured with a four-fingered claw toward the suspended image. "The humans have not had a presence in the rift for 300 cycles. Their expansion was curtailed. Their fleets were pushed back to the Sol perimeter. We designated that sector as a quarantine zone, a tomb for the foolish. Nothing survives the rift. The gravitational shearing alone would reduce a standard hull to atomic dust in days. Yet you bring me this?" He turned his gaze toward Science Minister Alara, a slender, avian-like being whose feathers were ruffled in a display of defensive posture. She adjusted the interface on her datapad, her movements sharp and nervous. She knew the precariousness of her position. To bring bad news to the High Council was often a career-ending move. To bring impossible news was a death sentence. "It is not an error, High Counselor," Alara replied, her voice melodic but strained, lacking the usual harmonic confidence of her caste. "We have run the sensor diagnostics 17 times. We have triangulated the signal using the deep space arrays on the moons of Keth. The signature is unmistakable. It matches the transponder codes of a vessel lost during the Great Expansion. A human-heavy cruiser, the ISS Dauntless." A murmur rippled through the chamber, a sound like dry leaves skittering over stone. The Dauntless. The name was a footnote in the history books of the Ascendancy, a minor tragedy in a war that the Xylanthians had barely considered a skirmish. The humans had sent a ship into the rift to escape a pursuing Xylanthian patrol, choosing suicide over surrender. It had been a gesture of defiance that the High Council had mocked at the time, the irrational last gasp of a species that did not understand when it was beaten. "The Dauntless," Vrax repeated, tasting the word with disdain. "That is a myth, a rusted coffin floating in the dark. If it is there, it is dead. Why does it demand the attention of the High Council? Why have you summoned the fleet admirals?" Alara stepped forward, entering the circle of light beneath the projection. She tapped a command into the console, and the hologram shifted. The static cleared slightly, revealing not just a silhouette, but a detailed topographic scan of the object. The gasp that followed was audible. The ship was not dead. It was not drifting. It was growing. The scan showed the original hull of the human cruiser, the familiar dual-engine configuration, and the hammerhead bridge, but it was encased in something else. Veins of glowing blue energy pulsed along the armor plating, which had thickened and evolved. Crystalline structures jutted from the flanks, looking less like technology and more like coral reef grown from steel and diamond. Massive, dark spires extended from the dorsal hull, humming with an energy output that spiked the sensors into the red. It looked like a beast that had swallowed the ship and become it, or a IP that had refused to die and had eaten the universe around it to survive. "It is transmitting," Alara whispered, the silence in the room so absolute that her breath sounded like a gale. "It is not a distress signal. It is not a request for aid. It is a navigational beacon. And High Counselor, The energy output suggests that the vessel is not running on fusion reactors. The readings indicate a zero-point energy singularity. The ship is powered by a contained black hole. Admiral Kale, the Supreme Commander of the Ascendancy's Armada, stepped forward. He was a creature of war, his body augmented with cybernetic plating, his eyes replaced by tactical sensors that glowed a faint, predatory red. A singularity? Kale scoffed, though his internal processors were already running threat simulations that ended in catastrophe. Humans do not possess that level of technology. They burn rocks and gas. They are scavengers. If this ship has a singularity, they stole it, or they stumbled upon ancient tech they do not understand. It is a bomb waiting to go off. We must destroy it before it destabilizes the entire sector. Vrax nodded slowly, the logic appealing to his desire for order. Agreed. It is an abomination, a ghost that refuses to fade. Admiral, take the Third Fleet. Intercept the vessel. If it does not power down, vaporize it. We cannot allow a rogue variable to exist on our borders. Alara raised a hand, a gesture of desperate protest. High Counselor, wait, the scans, the hull composition, it is regenerating. The ship is not just a machine, it appears to be adapting. If we attack it, we do not know how it will respond. The energy signature is passive right now, dormant. But the readings suggest that the weapon systems are integrated into the very structure of the vessel. It might be indestructible by conventional means. Kale laughed, a harsh, metallic, grinding sound. Nothing is indestructible, Science Minister. You look at the universe with wonder, I look at it with target locks. It is a human ship. It is fragile. I will break it, and we will be done with this ghost story. The transition from the High Council chamber to the bridge of the flagship Vengeance of Keth was a shift from quiet dread to disciplined militarism. The Vengeance was a masterpiece of Xylanthian engineering, a sleek needle-like dreadnought that spanned kilometers, its hull shimmering with adaptive camouflage and shielding that could withstand the heat of a star. Around it, the Third Fleet assembled, destroyers, frigates, and carriers, moving in a perfect, synchronized ballet of destruction. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, or so they believed. They had quelled rebellions, shattered pirate kingdoms, and enforced the Ascendancy's will for centuries. As the fleet initiated the jump to the Rift sector, the crew worked with the efficiency of a single organism. There was no fear here, only the anticipation of the hunt. But as the hyperspace tunnel collapsed and the fleet emerged into real space on the edge of the abyssal rift, the mood on the bridge shifted instantly. The view screen, typically dominated by the cold clarity of starlight, was filled with a chaotic swirling nebula of purple and black gas, the graveyard of the rift. And there, floating in the center of a calm pocket within the storm, was the Dauntless. It was massive. The holographic projection in the council chamber had failed to convey the sheer, crushing scale of it. The original human cruiser was visible, buried deep within the center like a fossil in amber, but the structure that had grown around it was the size of a moon. It was a fortress of dark metal and pulsating light, a cathedral of survival built from the debris of the cosmos. Twisted shards of asteroids, hull plates from long-dead alien vessels, and raw crystallized plasma had been fused together into a cohesive, terrifying whole. It didn't look built, it looked forged in hellfire. The Xylanthian fleet, vast and powerful as it was, looked like a swarm of insects buzzing around a sleeping giant. Admiral Kale stood on the command deck, his optical sensors zooming in on the surface of the anomaly. He saw no seams, no rivets. Hull was continuous, shifting slightly as if breathing. "Status report," he barked, masking the sudden spike of uncertainty in his neural net. "Shields up, weapons hot, hail the vessel, demand their immediate surrender and deactivation of that, whatever that power source is." The communications officer, a young lieutenant whose hands trembled slightly over the controls, opened a channel. "Unidentified vessel, this is Admiral Kale of the Xylanthian Ascendancy. You are in violation of restricted space. You are operating a vessel that poses a threat to galactic stability. Power down your engines and prepare for boarding, or you will be fired upon." Silence stretched. The crew of the Vengeance watched the waveform monitor, waiting for a response. There was no static, no interfere. "NCE, just a clean, empty line." Then the response came. It didn't come through the audio speakers alone. It seemed to resonate through the hull of the ship, vibrating the deck plates and humming in the teeth of the crew. It was a voice, but it sounded like many voices layered atop one another, men, women, machines, all speaking in perfect unison. It was calm, weary, and infinitely old. "This is the Terran ship Dauntless," the voice intoned. "We are holding position. We do not recognize your authority in this sector. Turn back, children of Keth. This place is not for you. You are not ready for what lies in the dark." Kale's mandibles tightened. the condescension to be called children by a species that had barely mastered space flight when the Zalanthians were building Dyson spheres. "We are not children," Kale growled. "We are the masters of this quadrant, and you are a derelict. I will not ask again. Lower your shields." The voice from the Dauntless sighed, a sound that felt like a depressurizing airlock. "We have no shields to lower, Admiral. We have only skin, and our skin is thick. Leave now. We are busy." "Busy?" Kale roared. "Busy doing what? Rusting?" He turned to his tactical officer. "Target the primary spire on the dorsal section. Fire a warning shot. Full-intensity particle beam. Let's see if we can wake them up." The order was relayed. The Vengeance shuddered as its main battery charged. A beam of concentrated antimatter enough to crack a planetary crust lashed out across the void. It struck the dark, organic hull of the Dauntless with a blinding flash. The bridge crew shielded their eyes, expecting to see debris, expecting to see a gaping wound in the enemy vessel. When the light faded, the silence on the bridge was absolute. The beam hadn't deflected. It hadn't penetrated. It had been absorbed. The spot where the weapon struck glowed a soft, pulsing gold for a moment, and then the energy seemed to flow along the veins of the ship, disappearing into the central mass. The energy reading of the human ship spiked slightly, as if it had just taken a deep breath. "Direct hit," the tactical officer whispered, his voice shaking. "Damage report, 0, target hull integrity at 100%. Admiral, the energy reserves of the target just increased by the exact amount we fired at them." Kale stared at the screen, his logic processors looping in a frantic attempt to make sense of the data. "They absorbed the shot. They ate it." "Impossible," he hissed. "All ships fire at will, overwhelm them, saturate the grid." The entire Third Fleet opened fire. Torpedoes, plasma cannons, lasers, and railguns unleashed a storm of destruction upon the silent giant. The void lit up with the fury of the ascendancy. Explosions blossomed across the surface of the Dauntless, wrapping it in a shroud of fire and radiation. For 10 full minutes, the barrage continued, a display of firepower that would have reduced a fortress world to glass. When the weapon's capacitors were dry and the fleet ceased fire to vent heat, the smoke cleared. The Dauntless drifted out of the haze, pristine, not a scratch. The only change was that the blue veins along its hull were now glowing a brilliant, blinding white. The ship was fully charged. And then it moved. It didn't use thrusters. There was no flare of engine exhaust. It simply shifted its position in space, manipulating the gravitational constant around it. It turned its massive bow toward the Zalanthian fleet. The voice returned, no longer weary but hard as diamond. "We told you to leave. You have wasted your ammunition. You have wasted our time, and you have attracted attention." Kale, for the first time in his life, felt the cold grip of genuine terror. "Attention? From whom?" "From the silence," the Dauntless replied. "But since you are intent on a demonstration, we will provide one. Observe." The human ship did not fire back. It did not launch missiles. Instead, a single bay door on the side of the massive structure opened. A small drone, no larger than a fighter, drifted out. It flew toward the nearest Zalanthian destroyer, the Glory of Zar. "What is that?" Kale demanded. "Shoot it down." But the point defense lasers passed right through the drone as if it were a phantom. The drone impacted the hull of the destroyer. It didn't explode. It dissolved upon contact, spreading like a silver stain across the metal. On the tactical display, the icon for the Glory of Zar turned from red to gray. "Report!" Kale screamed. "What is happening to that ship?" The comms officer looked up, eyes wide with horror. They are being disassembled, Admiral, at the molecular level, the nanites. They are rewriting the ship." On the view screen, the destroyer didn't blow up. It simply unraveled. The hull plates separated, the internal systems floated apart, and then, impossibly, they began to reassemble. Within moments, the aggressive, spiked warship of the Zalanthians had been reshaped. Ed into a smooth, spherical station, its weapons dismantled and turned into sensor arrays. The crew of the destroyer was hailed. "We are alive," the captain of the Glory reported, his voice trembling. "They didn't kill us, they just took our guns away. They reformatted the ship. We have life support, we have engines, but we have no weapons. The interface, it's human now, it's in Terran standard." The Dauntless spoke again. "We do not destroy unless we must. We repurpose. You came with weapons. We have removed them. Now, Admiral, we can talk, or we can continue this until your entire fleet is nothing but a collection of drift beacons and hydroponic farms. Your choice." Kale slumped in his command chair. The humiliation was total. The power disparity was infinite. He realized then that the human cruiser was merely the seed. The thing before him was a technological apex, a civilization contained within a single hull. "Stand down," Kale whispered. "All ships, stand down." The diplomatic shuttle that docked with the Dauntless hours later was a somber affair. Admiral Kale, Science Minister Alara, who had been rushed to the front via fast courier, and High Counselor Vrax via holographic presence, were in attendance. They expected to be met by soldiers, by cyborgs, by conquerors. Instead, the airlock opened to reveal a simple, sterile corridor that smelled of pine and rain, scents that were distinctly terrestrial. Walking to meet them was not a warrior in power armor, but an old man in a gray jumpsuit. He leaned on a cane, though his eyes were sharp and clear. He was flanked by two floating drones that hummed with a soft, comforting light. "Welcome aboard," the man said, his voice the same one that had broadcasted across the void, though now stripped of the digital layering. "I am Captain Vance, or what's left of him. We don't get many visitors." Alara stepped forward, her curiosity overcoming her fear. You are human?" she asked, scanning him. He looked frail. "Mostly," Vance smiled. "Parts of me are the ship, parts of the ship are me. We've been out here a long time. The nanites keep us going. They repair the hull, they repair the crew. We stopped aging a few centuries ago, just existing." He gestured for them to follow. As they walked through the ship, the aliens saw the interior was not a military vessel. It was a city. There were parks with real trees growing under artificial sunlight. There were schools where children, descendants of the original crew, learned mathematics and philosophy. There were vast fabrication bays where machines built other machines in a silent, hypnotic dance. But there were no weapons lockers, no barracks. "I do not understand," Kale said, his voice echoing in the large atrium they entered. "You have power that rivals a star. You could conquer the Ascendancy in a week. You turned my destroyer into a sensor buoy with a single drone. Why are you hiding in a nebula? Why did you let us think you were dead?" Vance stopped and looked at a large viewing port that displayed the swirling violet clouds of the rift. His expression grew somber. "We aren't hiding, Admiral. We are guarding." He tapped his cane on the deck. "When we came here, escaping your patrols all those years ago, we found something. The rift isn't just a nebula. It's a scar, a weak point in reality, and something is trying to get through." The High Counselor's hologram flickered. "What do you mean, get through? An invasion?" "An infection," Vance corrected. "From outside our universe, we call them the Hollows, entities of entropy. They consume energy, light, heat, life. If they breach the rift, they won't just conquer your ascendancy. They will eat the stars. They will turn this galaxy into a cold, dark grave." Vance turned to face them. "We found the breach. The Dauntless was damaged, sinking. We interfaced with the wreckage of an ancient precursor station we found here, tech left behind by the last people who tried to hold the line. We merged with it. We became the plug in the dam." Alara looked at the readings on her datapad, her eyes widening. "The energy output, the singularity, you're not using it for propulsion, you're channeling it outward." "Correct," Vance nodded. "We are projecting a containment field into the rift. It takes every ounce of power we generate. That's why we absorb energy. We need it. When you fired on us— thank you, by the way, that topped off our capacitors for another decade. We were running low." The irony hit Kale like a physical blow. Their attack, intended to destroy the threat, had actually strengthened the only thing saving them from total annihilation. "Why didn't you tell us?" Vrax demanded. "We could have sent aid. We could have sent fleets." Vance laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "Would you? 100 years ago you wanted to exterminate us. If we told you we were holding back a cosmic horror, you would have thought it was a trick, or worse, you would have tried to weaponize the breach. We couldn't take the risk. Humans, we are stubborn. We hold the line, that's what we do. We don't ask for permission, and we don't ask for thanks." He walked over to a console and pressed a button. The shutters on the far wall retracted, revealing a view of the rear of the ship, the side facing deeper into the rift. The aliens gasped. Beyond the ship, the universe looked wrong. It was a wall of writhing, static-filled darkness pressing against a shimmering, golden net of energy that radiated from the Dauntless. Enormous, shadowy shapes larger than star systems pushed against the net, their forms indistinct but terrifyingly malevolent. The Dauntless was tiny against that backdrop, a single candle holding back the night. "That is the enemy," Vance said softly. "The Hollows, they are hungry. And they are getting stronger." The silence in the room was heavy, filled with a sudden, crushing perspective. The politics of the Ascendancy, the border disputes, the wars for resources, it all seemed infinitesimally small. "You have been fighting this alone?" Alara asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "For 300 years. We have duties," Vance shrugged. "The crew accepted it. We live, we serve, we hold, but we are tired. The ship is strong, stronger than ever, but the breach is widening. We can't hold it forever." "Not alone." Admiral Kale looked at the old human, then at the terrifying void beyond. The logic of war was simple. Identify the greatest threat and neutralize it. He realized he had been looking at the wrong threat his entire life. He dropped to one knee, a gesture of submission and respect that no Xylanthian admiral had ever performed for a human. "You will not be alone," Kale vowed. "The Third Fleet is at your disposal. I will bring the ascendancy here. We will bring generators, resources, ships. We will build a wall of fire alongside your shield." Vance looked at the admiral, surprise flickering in his eyes. "We didn't expect that. We expected to die here eventually. Are you sure your council will agree?" Vrax's hologram stepped forward. The High Counselor's arrogance was gone, replaced by the pragmatic survival instinct that had kept his species alive for eons. "The Council will agree," Vrax stated. "Or I will dissolve it. The Ascendancy does not succumb to the dark. We have been blind, Captain. We thought humans were chaotic, short-sighted. We did not know you were the guardians we needed." "We aren't guardians," Vance said, looking back at the swirling darkness. "We're just the ones who refused to run away." The alliance that formed in the following months was unprecedented. Xylanthian engineering ships worked alongside the drones of the Dauntless, constructing massive energy siphons to feed the human ship's insatiable hunger. Sildari scientists worked with the descendants of the human crew to optimize the containment algorithms. The rift became not a graveyard, but a fortress. The Dauntless sat at the center, the heart of a growing megastructure that spanned the sector. But the story did not end with peace. It ended with a warning. 6 months after the alliance was solidified, the sensors on the Dauntless picked up a new signal. It wasn't from the Hollows. It was from behind them, from the depths of the Ascendancy's own territory. It was a signal using the same ancient precursor code that the Dauntless had found. It was a distress call. Vance stood on the bridge, now crowded with alien and human officers working in tandem. "It's coming from the galactic core," Alara said, her feathers pale with shock. "The signal. It says, line breached, secondary containment failed, they are already inside." Vance looked at Kale. The peace they had built, the unity they had forged, was about to be tested. The Dauntless had held the back door, but the front door had just been kicked open. "Captain," Kale said, his hand resting on the hilt of his ceremonial blade. "What are your orders?" Vance smiled, a grim, determined smile that had survived centuries of darkness. The ship around them hummed, the living metal anticipating the fight to come. The Dauntless was no longer just a ship. It was the flagship of a united galaxy. "Disconnect the containment tether," Vance ordered. "Let the automated systems hold the rift. We're moving the ship." "To where?" Vrax asked from the comm screen. "To the core," Vance said. "We spent 300 years being the shield. It's time to be the sword." As the Dauntless disengaged, its engines flaring with the light of a contained singularity, the alien fleets formed up on its wings. Thousands of ships, different species, different philosophies, all following the lead of the ancient, scarred human vessel. They were no longer underestimated. They were the vanguard. And as they jumped into hyperspace, heading toward the impossible war awaiting them in the core, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The abandoned ship had come back, strong. Than ever, not to conquer, but to save them all. And this time, it wasn't alone. The jump flash illuminated the nebula one last time, leaving the silence of the void behind, but the message remained, echoing in the sensors of the automated buoys left in their wake. "Terra Invicta. We endure." The darkness would come, but the fire of humanity, stoked by time and tempered by isolation, would burn brighter. The legend of the Dauntless was just beginning.